Daniel had never believed that time itself could feel alive, but if it could, it would sound exactly like the vibration of his phone at 2:17 a.m. The sound was soft yet invasive, slicing through the stillness of his apartment with a precision that felt intentional. He lay half awake, staring at the ceiling, where faint streetlight shadows crawled like slow-moving insects, trying to convince himself it was a random call, a mistake, a meaningless disturbance in the middle of the night. His phone rested on the nightstand, screen lighting up the darkness with a cold glow. Unknown number. He turned away, closed his eyes, and waited for it to stop. It didn't. The vibration grew louder in his mind, each pulse syncing with his heartbeat, until irritation overcame caution. He answered. "Hello?" His voice sounded strange to him, thin and distant, as if someone else were speaking from inside his chest. There was no greeting, no words, only breathing. Heavy, wet, uneven. The kind of breathing that suggested effort, pain, or fear. Daniel sat up, scanning the room, suddenly aware of how silent everything else was. No hum of traffic, no distant sirens, just that breathing, so close it felt like someone was leaning over him. "Who is this?" he demanded, forcing steadiness into his voice. The breathing continued, each inhale dragging, each exhale trembling slightly, as though the person on the other end was struggling to stay conscious. A chill crept up Daniel's spine. He had received prank calls before, but this was different. This felt intimate, personal, as if the caller knew exactly where he was, exactly how vulnerable he was in that moment. "This isn't funny," he said, louder now. "Don't call me again." The breathing hitched, turned sharp for a second, almost a gasp, and then the line went dead. Daniel stared at his phone, the silence suddenly deafening. The call log showed 23 seconds. He told himself it was nothing, a wrong number, someone drunk, someone sick, yet sleep refused to return. The next night, at precisely 2:17 a.m., the phone rang again. Same number, same vibration. This time, he didn't answer. He watched it ring until it stopped, his chest tight, palms damp. Exactly 1 minute later, it rang again. Daniel answered out of sheer frustration. The breathing was louder now, closer, accompanied by a faint clicking sound, rhythmic, mechanical. A turn signal. He froze. "Listen," he said, his voice dropping to a whisper. "You need to stop calling me." The breathing faltered, as if the person on the other end had heard him, understood him, and was trying to respond. But no words came. Night after night the calls continued. 2:17 a.m., never earlier, never later. Blocking the number did nothing. Turning the phone off did nothing. At 2:17, the phone would power itself on, glowing in the darkness like an open eye. On the 7th night, something changed. Along with the breathing came the sound of rain, heavy rain, followed by the unmistakable shriek of twisting metal. And beneath it all, faint but unmistakable, a panicked voice whispered, "I can't stop. The brakes." Daniel's blood ran cold. Outside his window, the street was dry, silent. Whatever was calling him was not calling from the present. By morning, Daniel was certain of one thing: ignoring the calls was no longer an option. His reflection in the bathroom mirror looked unfamiliar. Dark circles under his eyes, skin pale, lips pressed into a thin line of constant unease. With shaking hands, he dialed the number back. It rang twice before an automated voice answered, calm and indifferent. The number you have dialed is no longer in service. He hung up, heart pounding, and immediately began searching online. It took hours: old forums, archived phone directories, local news databases. But eventually he found it. A brief article from 5 years ago, buried deep in a regional newspaper's website. Fatal car crash on Highway 9 at 2:17 a.m. The driver, a 32-year-old man named Michael Rivers, was pronounced dead at the scene. The photo showed a mangled car wrapped around a guardrail, rain reflecting off twisted metal like liquid glass. Daniel's stomach twisted as he read further. Witnesses reported that Michael had been swerving, headlights flashing erratically, horn blaring before the crash. Police noted that Michael's phone had been found on the driver's seat, call logs showing multiple failed outgoing calls made moments before impact. The timestamp in the report burned into Daniel's mind: 2:17 a.m. He closed his laptop, suddenly unable to breathe properly. That night, when the phone rang, he answered instantly. The breathing was worse now, ragged, painful, like lungs filling with fluid. "Michael?" Daniel whispered, unsure why the name had escaped his lips. The breathing paused. Then, for the first time, a voice spoke clearly. "You can hear me now," it said, weak but relieved. Daniel's knees nearly gave out. "I didn't before," the voice continued. "I kept calling. No one answered." Daniel swallowed hard. "I can't help you," he said, though the words felt hollow. You're already dead." A low, broken laugh came through the line. "That's what I thought, too." The sound of rain intensified, punctuated by sirens in the distance. "It doesn't end," Michael whispered. "It just passes on." The call ended abruptly. Daniel stood in the dark long after, phone pressed to his ear, mind racing. The next morning, police found him dead in his apartment, collapsed near the window, phone clutched in his hand. There were no signs of struggle, no note, just one entry in his call log: outgoing call, 2:17 a.m. And somewhere in another quiet apartment, another phone began to vibrate. The phone belonged to Emma Caldwell, a 29-year-old emergency room nurse who lived 3 floors below Daniel's apartment. She was used to late-night disturbances, sirens, drunk arguments in the street, the occasional neighbor knocking at odd hours. But nothing prepared her for the vibration that slid across her kitchen counter at 2:17 a.m. She had just returned from a double shift, her body aching, mind dulled by exhaustion. At first she ignored it. Then she noticed the time, the exactness of it: 2:17. Her phone lit up with an unknown number, the screen reflecting faintly off a half-empty mug of cold tea. She frowned, irritation rising, and answered without thinking. "Hello?" The sound that came back made her breath catch. Breathing, deep, labored, and disturbingly familiar. She heard that sound every day in the ER, echoing through trauma bays and ambulance bays, the sound of bodies fighting not to shut down. "Sir?" she said instinctively, slipping into professional mode.
If you're having trouble breathing, you need to call emergency services." The breathing continued, slow and wet, accompanied by a faint clicking noise she couldn't immediately place. Her stomach tightened. "Can you tell me where you are?" she asked. Silence. Then, faintly, a whisper. "It's starting again." The call dropped. Emma stared at her phone, pulse racing. She checked the call log. One incoming call, 2:17 a.m., duration 19 seconds. She tried calling back. The number was no longer in service. Unease crawled into her bones, but exhaustion eventually won. She slept. The next night, the phone rang again. Same time, same number, same breathing. This time, Emma noticed something else beneath the sound, a low hum, almost electrical, like a phone speaker pushed too hard. She began recording the call. When she played it back afterward, the file was silent. No breathing, no hum, nothing. By the fourth night, the breathing had changed. It sounded weaker, fragmented, like someone losing strength. On the fifth, she heard rain. On the sixth, metal bending. And on the seventh, she heard a voice say her name. Not spoken clearly, more like it was being dragged out of a throat that could barely form words, but unmistakably hers. Emma stopped answering after that. She couldn't. Yet the calls kept coming, and each time she ignored them, the voicemail filled with nothing but static, except for a single phrase that began to repeat itself, growing clearer each night. "You answered too late." Emma finally did what Daniel never had time to do. She went to the police before the calls finished their cycle. At the station, she sounded irrational even to herself, explaining the timing, the breathing, the voice that shouldn't have known her name. The officer listened politely, typed notes, and nodded with the practiced patience reserved for people on the edge of panic. Then he paused. "You said the call comes at exactly 2:17, he asked. Emma nodded. He exchanged a look with another officer before standing up. 10 minutes later, he returned with a thin file folder. Inside were 2 reports. Daniel Harper, Michael Rivers, both dead, both connected to unexplained phone activity, both time of death, 2:17 a.m. Emma felt the room tilt. "They answered, didn't they?" she whispered. The officer didn't respond. That night, Emma didn't go home. She stayed awake in her car, phone placed face down on the passenger seat, hands clenched around the steering wheel. At 2:17, it rang. She answered immediately. "I'm here," she said, voice shaking. The breathing came, shallow and frantic. "You're early," a voice said, not Michael's, not Daniel's, but something layered, as if several voices were speaking through the same mouth. "Good." Emma swallowed hard. "What is this?" she asked. The response came slowly, deliberately. "A transfer." The sound of rain poured through the line, followed by screaming metal and overlapping breaths. When someone dies unheard, time folds. The call keeps ringing until it's answered, and when it is, the breathing surged, overwhelming the speaker. Emma felt tears streaming down her face. "I don't want this," she whispered. The voice softened, almost sympathetic. "Neither did the others." The call ended. Emma sat frozen, phone buzzing softly in her hand. She checked the time. 2:17 a.m. had passed. For the first time in weeks, the phone was silent. She exhaled, relief flooding her chest, until her screen lit up again. Incoming call. Unknown number. The time read 2:17 a.m. again. Time, she realized, wasn't moving forward anymore. It was looping. And now that she had answered, it wasn't going to stop with her.
Emma stopped thinking of sleep as something her body required and began treating it like an enemy tactic, something that would leave her defenseless. She stayed awake through the nights that followed, lights on, television murmuring endlessly in the background, phone always in her hand. Yet, no matter where she was or what she did, 2:17 a.m. arrived with the same inevitability as gravity. The call came even when she powered the phone off, even when she removed the SIM card. Once she threw the phone into a public trash bin 3 blocks away, only to find it vibrating on her kitchen table an hour later, perfectly clean, screen glowing as if nothing had happened. The voice no longer pretended to be human. Sometimes it sounded like Michael, sometimes like Daniel, sometimes like a child crying underwater. Each night revealed fragments, images pressed into sound, tires skidding, glass shattering, a body trapped, lungs collapsing, fingers slipping on a cracked screen while a call failed again and again to connect. Emma began to understand. These weren't ghosts reaching forward in time. They were moments that never ended, deaths that didn't complete because they were never witnessed. In the ER, death had always been final, monitors flatlining, time stamped, bodies zipped away. But these deaths had happened unseen, unheard, and so time bent, looping those final seconds like a skipping record, searching for someone to listen. On the 9th night, Emma noticed something new. Beneath the breathing, beneath the rain and metal, there was another sound, dialing, fingers tapping numbers in desperation. And then, just before the call ended, a whisper layered beneath the others. "You'll pass it too." Emma's fear hardened into resolve. If the curse moved forward by transfer, by being answered, then maybe it could be interrupted. Maybe the loop could be closed by forcing the call to complete where it had first failed. Emma began digging into Michael Rivers' last known movements, driving Highway 9 during the rain, stopping at the guardrail where the crash had occurred. At exactly 2:17 a.m., she stood there with her phone in hand. When it rang, the sound echoed strangely across the empty road. She answered, heart hammering. "I'm here," she said. "You made it. Someone heard you." For the first time, the breathing stopped completely. There was silence, not dead silence, but resting silence. The rain faded, the metal sounds dissolved. A voice spoke, clear and calm. "Thank you." The line went dead. Emma stood trembling in the dark, convinced just for a moment that she had done it, that she had ended it. Her phone remained silent as the clock ticked forward to 2:18, then 2:19. Dawn came. Emma laughed and cried at the same time. But deep beneath her relief was a sensation she couldn't name yet. Something tightening, like a knot forming where there hadn't been one before. Emma was driving home when the phone vibrated in the cup holder, the suddenness nearly causing her to swerve. Her stomach dropped as she glanced at the screen. Unknown number. She answered instantly. There was no breathing this time, only a voice, her own. "Hello?" it said, perfectly matching her tone, her cadence, her hesitation. Emma slammed the brakes and pulled over, hands shaking violently. "That's not funny," she whispered, though she knew it wasn't a joke. "You closed one loop," the layered voice said, returning, stronger now. "You created another."
The sounds that followed were no longer just memories of past deaths. They were possibilities. Horns blaring, tires screaming, glass exploding closer than before. The unanswered don't move on. They spread. Each witness becomes a signal. Emma felt the truth settle in with crushing weight. By answering, by listening, by caring, she had amplified the loop instead of ending it. Death no longer needed a crash or a mistake. It only needed someone awake at the right moment. "How do I stop it?" she demanded. The voice paused, as if considering the question for the first time. "You don't," it replied. "You choose where it lands." The call ended. Emma sat alone in her car, the city quiet around her, heart pounding as the implications unraveled in her mind. Somewhere, someone else's phone was going to ring earlier than 2:17. The loop was accelerating. And now Emma knew the final rule, the one Daniel never lived long enough to learn. The last call always comes from you. As she stared at her reflection in the dark windshield, her phone lit up again. Same number, new time, 2:15 a.m. And this time, the breathing on the other end matched her own. Emma didn't sleep that night. She couldn't. The city outside her car seemed hollow, its streetlights flickering like the heartbeat of something very old, something patient. By 2:15 a.m., her phone vibrated violently. The unknown number flashed on the screen, brighter than any display should have been, like it was alive, like it was watching her. Hands trembling, she answered. The line was silent at first. Then the breathing came. Not human, not Michael, not Daniel, but something older, slower, heavier, as if it had been alive long before either of them existed. And beneath the breathing, faint voices layered over one another, whispers, cries, laughter, that she recognized instinctively as lives lost before hers. One voice stood out, ancient, commanding, and unmistakable. It started with him. The breath caught in her throat. She felt the air around her thicken. "Who?" she whispered. The line crackled, and a distorted voice answered, almost amused. The first, the one who listened but didn't answer. He made the world know. He set the rhythm. Rain started falling in a thin drizzle, though the clouds were clear above. Emma's vision blurred. In her mind, she saw a man standing on a cliff of cracked pavement, hand in hand, calling out into the darkness. He had called too late. The sound had traveled, bouncing off time itself, shaping the curse that now reached her. Every call answered creates another. Every loop transfers. Every witness becomes a link. Emma's heart sank. She understood the full weight of the curse for the first time. It wasn't Michael's, Daniel's, or even hers. It had existed long before. The loop had started with a single unanswered call long ago, and with each victim who had answered or failed to answer, it had grown, folding into itself, shaping itself, learning, waiting. The phone in her hand began to vibrate faster, hotter, almost burning, and then the voice whispered, not into the phone, but into her mind. The first call will never end. It only moves forward. You hold the next. Emma froze. The storm of lives and deaths pulsed through the line. She realized in horror that this was no longer just a series of deaths. It was a living, evolving pattern, and she was in the center of it. Panic and resolve battled inside her as she drove aimlessly, rain streaking the windshield, her eyes wide, scanning every shadow, every reflection. She tried to shut it out, to ignore the phone, but it was impossible. Vibrating, glowing, vibrating again, 2:14 a.m. now, faster than it should have been. She answered, hands clenching the wheel. This time, the voice was calm, almost cordial, but each word carried the weight of centuries. Time is a chain, and you are the link. The first link never rests. The last link will never sleep. All the others exist between. Emma felt her mind twist, her sense of reality unraveling. She remembered Daniel's death, Michael's, the voices of unknown strangers she had overheard in the recordings. It was all connected, a single pulse of consciousness that had learned how to reach through seconds, through minutes, into the minds of those who were awake at the wrong hour. The voice continued, layering over itself in a polyphonic whisper. The chain spreads, but it is patient. You think answering ends it. No, you perpetuate it. You are both witness and participant. The rhythm continues, the loops accelerate, and soon, a pause, deliberate, suffocating. Soon, the first call will demand you. Emma's knuckles whitened as she held the phone, realizing with a cold, sinking certainty that the rules were not simple. The loop was not bound to hours or days. It was bound to the listeners, the answerers, the witnesses. And somewhere in the distance she could almost hear another phone beginning to ring, another unknown number, another link, another life about to become part of the same infinite rhythm.